name is Kate Huffman, and I'm a potter in Whatcheer, Iowa. That's what I do. And I've been doing it for 50 years. This is my 50th year here. Hi, welcome to Whatcheer Potters. Come on in. My husband and I came from Decorah. We both were Luther students, and we wanted to build a pottery in Decorah. But fire brick were $5 a brick. The factory closed in '65, and the kilns that are 25 feet in diameter went 9 feet down into the ground full of pristine fire brick. So any potter out of his mind would come down here and try to haul as many brick away as they could. My husband, being the most out of his mind, came down to get 2,000 fire brick and stayed all summer and got 10,000 fire brick and called me up and said, "What do you think about living in Whatcheer?" So basically that's how I came to Whatcheer. We didn't own a car. I got a job in town at the local grocery store, which was a 15-minute walk from here. And Jerry proceeded to try and build a studio. E.G. Nelson was a contractor in Red Wing, Minnesota. So he left Minnesota, he brought his crew down here, and he started building the main building. And I've heard there were 50 masons building, because it was a 5-story brick building. E.G. built the building, and then I guess the guy who commissioned him to build the building backed out. So all of a sudden E.G. owns this factory. It was actually the largest sewer pipe plant in the early 1900s.
At the pottery they made brick, sewer tile, other objects like that with the fire brick. It was very important for Whatcheer because by then a lot of the mines had been mined out, and Whatcheer needed employment. And so they knew starting in about 1911 or 1912 that they would employ about 130 people. And so it was a very big thing for Whatcheer to have that much employment in town.
They had a press that literally came down because they were making sewer pipe that was 36 inches in diameter and 5 feet long. Well, you're talking 2 tons of clay.
The Whatcheer Clay Products was purchased by American Steel Foundries of Chicago in 1962. A new subsidiary was named Griffin Pipe Products. By December of 1963, 65 men had been laid off, with more to follow. Then in January of 1964, the plant was owned by Amstead, had been shut down. So by January of 1964, the entire place is closed down. The city of Whatcheer has a development committee to try to get it reopened, but that never happened. It was purchased by a farmer, and then in the fall of 1971, Kate and Jerry Huffman purchased the pottery.
I worked there until they closed the doors. When I got out, went into service in '64, about end of '64 was when they ended up taking bankruptcy and closed the pottery.
So in the 1960s, production at the Clay Products then was slowing down due to the fact that plastic had been introduced and were going to be used for things that they had also used for brick, for clay, and eventually then the plant just closed.
It was a sad deal that pottery had to shut down, but that was a big income for Whatcheer after the coal mines.
When we moved here, there had been a potter. His name was Johnny Nelson. And he made pots. And evidently, now I'm not sure if this is true, he was Johnny Nelson. E.G. Nelson owned the pottery, but they weren't related. I always thought they were, but they weren't. Johnny would put his pots in the kilns when they were firing tile. I don't know if that's true or not. But he made big bird baths, and I mean, he made a lot of sculptural things. When we moved here, his pottery, which had been run by his grandsons, burned down. So I don't even know where his pottery was, but there are a lot of collectors in Whatshire that have collected Johnny Nelson's pots.
Yeah, we like to watch Grandpa turn on the wheel because he can make a lot of different things. He'd make something and then he'd just pick it up and throw it back on the wheel of the glob of clay. I can see him yet. He'd be sitting in the shop. He'd have a bucket of clay that he was sorting the little pebbles and stuff out of so he could make a mold or do something with it. And when I was growing up, I didn't realize the artist he was. There's a man at Whatshire that's got quite a collection of his, just pieces I didn't even know he made. But they're few and far between now.
When we bought the factory, all of the local people who were watching us, you know, wanting us to succeed, said, well, you're going to keep the frog going, aren't you? And I said, if you tell me what you're talking about. And so we walked out into the field and they showed me this frog on the side of the tile. So I kind of did like a brass rubbing. I thought it would be kind of fun to have a souvenir because for almost 50 years, anyone who came down here and wanted to get a gift wanted it to say Whatshire. And if it didn't say Whatshire, it had to have the frog. So Jerry made a little impression of an aerial frog so that we could at least have the frog on there if it wasn't the actual medallion. I don't know who designed that. But I'll tell you, come spring, you go deaf listening to all the frogs. I had a gentleman come down who his summer job when he was home from college was stamping the frog on the side of each tile as it was extruded. And he said it was a fine art. They gave you the stamp and they gave you a rubber mallet and you had to hit it just right because it was either too deep or too light. It had to be just right. And you see, even that was a technical, yeah, he had a quality control guy. One of the funny things about Whatshire in the factory is there were a set of molds. And evidently the guys, I don't know, on their break, whenever, they would press clay into these molds and they were male and female frogs. And I would go to these auctions looking for a chair or something and these farmers would go, hey, go turn that frog over, just to see me turn red. So when you're just starting out, and you are convinced that you want to be a potter, there's a lot you've got to learn. Our basic education really was, this is how you make a pot. And we built our own wheels. So I guess for the whole 10 years, basically, we were having fun because we were actually doing it. But you're 20 years old, you know, you've got a tremendous amount of energy. And when I think about making clay, I mean, we made 5 tons of clay in 2 months every year, starting from scratch. And bagged it and carried it down into the basement because that was where our studio was. We heated with wood, so we were out cutting wood. We lived on a bag of whole wheat, made chapatis with peanut butter and jelly. And I remember we had some friends come to visit and Jane said, it's about time for supper. And I said, sure, do you want potato soup, French fries, potato, what would you like? I have a bag of potatoes. And she just could not believe that we'd been living on potatoes. So, you know, it's a real challenge. We felt like settlers, I think. And my husband loved it. He was the builder. And so there wasn't anything that scared him. And like I said, for some weird reason, we were being supported by everyone in the community. I don't think the pots were very good at the beginning, and yet people would come out looking for a wedding gift or something, and they were always there to help, always there to offer a hand. And that is really the reason that we were able to keep going.
When they came down here, those two were so poor. And they worked hard. Oh my goodness, did they work hard. They rented the house down there. They built their own salt kiln. And I told them one day, I said, you guys can't make a living doing this. Of course, I was a farmer. Farming was the only way of making a living. And they definitely proved me wrong. And they was just doing things different, you know. And they were so determined that what they was going to do is what they was going to do. And just one step after another, and I just felt sorry for them all the time, because it just seemed like everything they was doing was very slow. It was a very slow process what they was doing, but they was determined. You know, they did it. They actually did it. What I told them they couldn't do, they did it. So it's really amazing.
For them to still be in business here in Watch Year after 50 years, Kate and Jerry are wonderful artists. They've stayed true to Watch Year. I don't know if I want to say the meaning of Watch Year, but the history of Watch Year, and they've been a part of our community for many, many years.
Our pots got nice enough that we were accepted to art fairs. So for 10 years we traveled to Chicago and Minneapolis, and we did street shows, Cedar Falls and Waterloo and the Oskaloosa Art on the Square. It's just been a real hoot. Everything that I have now is a culmination of 50 years of playing. That's what it was. It wasn't work. If you didn't play, it wasn't any fun. And if it wasn't any fun, you might as well work more hours at the grocery, because it was hard work. But it was all we did.